My name is Shane Carston.
If I was going to give you a title on screen, what would it be?
Shane? I'm the director of a Christ-centered recovery home in God's Gangsters in Springfield, Missouri.
Okay, I'll put something like that on there. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Tell me about your childhood.
So the first part of my childhood was pretty awesome. Um, my first memories, my mom had a boyfriend. His name was Paul, and we had a nice house. We had discipline. We had a great upbringing. Barbecues. He played the guitar. We'd sit around the backyard and he'd sing. And he was our dad, and he treated us really, really well, and he loved us a lot. And he was very strict as well, though. If we weren't, you don't talk back to your mother. You don't, when we go somewhere, hey, you boys be on your best behavior, and yes, sir, we're going to be on our best behavior. And I was kind of a little bit hyper, and so he would leave for work, and he'd be like, "I'm going to get a report from your mom when I get home if you were good or you were bad," and if we were bad, we would get a whooping, and but it wasn't abusive. He would take us to the room, and he would say, "Okay, now explain to me what you did and why you're gonna get in trouble." And if I would have just said the truth, if I would have just been like, "This is what I did," then he would just whip the bed and next to my butt instead of whipping my butt. But I'd always say, "I don't know," and I did know. And so every time I say I don't know, the whooping got harder and harder until I finally would confess to what I did, and then it would be over. But I was a slow learner. But and that was how the first 7 years of my life was, and it was pretty good. We were good kids, and we felt we were loved. And then one day, I don't remember how it all played out, and I don't know, I was just a kid, but I remember there was this car in front of our house, and my mom was loading up all of our stuff in this car, and we were moving. And so we moved from Los Banos, California to Merced, California, and that's when our lives changed. The I second grade. I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. The new boyfriend. My mom had an alcohol and drug problem, and the new boyfriend, he molested me. And for about a year, we lived there, and I was scared to death. I was not to say nothing, and I didn't say anything. But I that led to a lot of stuff in my life, because I knew that I wasn't gay, like I wasn't, but I questioned a lot of stuff in my sexuality. I didn't understand quite why these things happened, you know what I mean? And so my whole life, I was always seeking the approval of women. For years, I couldn't be faithful to nothing or nobody. If a girl would give me attention, then I wanted her attention. And I think that happening to me was a big part of the lust demon that I had for a lot of years. That relationship, my mom, it was a short one. It was about a year, and then just like the time before, there was a car in front of the house, and it's got all of our stuff loaded up, and we're gone. We moved back to Los Banos, to a new relationship, and this one wasn't a sexual abuse. It was physical abuse. And we had a house that you walk in the front door, and then if you walk in the front door, all the doors are in line. You can run straight through the living room, through the kitchen. The bedrooms are off to the side, and straight out into the back porch and out through the yard. And I walked in the door, and I always stuck by my mom because I felt like I had to protect her. So he was beating her up pretty good, and I ran into the kitchen, and I grabbed a cast iron skillet, and I ran in the room, and I hit him as hard as I could with it. And he looked up at me, and I remember just fire in his eyes, and just like, "I'm going to kill you." And I took off running, and I ran through the house, out the back door, and we had an alley behind our house. And I jumped on the fence, and I was pulling myself up over the fence, and I remember feeling this humongous hand just grab me and pull me off that fence, and turned around and just hit me right in broke my nose and blacked both my eyes. I didn't go to school for like almost 3 weeks. and it was like that for a couple years. So I was always insecure, and we were poor, so it was like I didn't really. I fit in with the poor kids, and my mom had, and they always had their drinking and partying buddies. They always had, those people always also have kids, so we were all the same kids. That's who I hung out with and stuff like that. And I get kicked out of school all the time. I got kicked out of I can't remember how many schools I got kicked out of for fighting. And then just like everything else, I was getting ready to start the fourth or the fifth grade, and we moved again. And this relationship was kind of like the first one. The guy was actually a decent guy and treated us pretty well. There wasn't any abuse or um, anything weird going on. You know what I mean? And he had a really good job, and you know what I mean. We were well taken care of, and for the first time in my life, like we had decent school clothes to wear, and good brand name shoes or whatever, and then just like before, same scenario over and over. Come home from school, and my mom had bought these two jalopy cars, and we were moving, and this time we were moving across this. We moved to Utah, to Delta, Utah. Sorry, I'm stuttering, and I'm trying to remember it all. And this is when the drugs and alcohol in my life got out of control. I had already been smoking. I started smoking pot probably when I was 9 years old, but I would just steal it from my mom. So I was already smoking pot at that time. But the beginning of my seventh grade year, we partied every single day. My mom would buy alcohol for us, mushrooms, acid, meth, whatever was coming around. We did it. We'd have these big old parties all the time, and I'd tell my mom, like, I don't want to go to school. I don't feel good. I got a hangover. And she would be like, you're going to school. She'd take me across the street to the store and buy me a tall can of a beer with a tomato juice in it, and drink this. That's the cure for your hangover, and you're gonna go to school. I knew what I was doing was wrong. Like I had that first few years of my life where I was raised right. That first 6 years, you do what's right. And good boys get good things, bad boys get bad things. And I knew what I was doing was bad. And I knew, that those are the most, I think, crucial years, that first years of my life. If it wasn't for those years in that house and having Paul raise us the way he did and love us and teach us respect, I wouldn't have known that what I was doing was wrong. I wouldn't have had that conscience of, I shouldn't be doing this, So at the end of my school year, I didn't want to stay there anymore. And so I saved my money for most of the summer. And at the end of the summer, I threw some of my clothes in a backpack and I jumped out our apartment window, and I hitchhiked from Delta, Utah to Salt Lake City, Utah. And I got on a Amtrak and drove the train back to California. I didn't tell nobody where I was going. And my mom had a friend in California. Her name was Andrea. And I went to her house, and she's like, what are you doing here? And I said, don't tell my mom. And I told her what was going on, and that I just didn't like the way I was living out there. So she took me in, and for a couple months, and then my cousin DJ found out what was going on, and he came and got me, and I stayed with him and his wife for that year, about a year and a half. And that was also refreshing. I wasn't allowed to drink. I wasn't allowed to party. I had to have good grades. And he was a karate instructor, and I did I wrestled in high school, and I was pretty good. And my self-esteem started kind of raising. I was a pretty good athlete, and they expected me to do stuff, my chores and my schoolwork. And I was in the FFA. I had a pig, and I used to show my pig at the fair, and it was normalcy. You know what I mean? And it was pretty awesome. And the one thing I forgot to mention was that when I was a child, I don't know what my mom's real voice sounds like. So she had thyroid cancer when I was a little kid, and they took her voice box and her vocal cords. So she talked like this. She couldn't yell or raise her voice or anything. So she had a wooden spoon. She was serious if you didn't listen. But just like every other time in my life, my mom showed back up. And she had moved to Turlock, California, and she wanted me to come and live with her. And the scar tissue in her throat would build up every few years, and she would have to have another tracheotomy surgery, and they'd have to cut the scar tissue out and stuff. And I knew she was sick again, and so I decided to go to Turlock and live with her. And so I started my first day. I was a freshman in high school, and I started my first day at Turlock High, which is the biggest school I've ever been in. There was like 5,000 kids there. And she sent me to school, that my first day of school, with 100 joints, because she didn't have any way to pay for our house or to have anything because she was sick. And so I went to school every day with 100 joints, and I would sell joints at school to pay all of our bills and to make sure that we, had stuff or whatever. And I got in with a really good crowd at school, and I was already addicted to methamphetamines. I used it on a regular basis by that time. I had started using it when we were in Utah, and then I didn't use for that period of time when I was with DJ and Jamie. And then as soon as I got back with where my mom was at, I would started using again. And so high school was a kind of a blur. And I got kicked out of Turlock High, and then I had to go to Ceres High, and I got kicked out of Ceres High, so I went to continuation, and then got kicked out of continuation, and I had to go to I can't remember the name of the school, but it was another school that I had to go to, and I ended up dropping out when I was a sophomore. But when I look back at my life, I feel sorry for myself. Like, dude, it's not like I sit and like, oh, poor me type thing. And I'm not, like I said, I'm free. But it's a sad existence, and I see it in people too, and it's really heartbreaking that people, because I believe that that the enemy wanted to take me out young, when I was a child, before, I had he wanted to break, that's where he attacks. I believe that, any way that he could break families apart, separate father, divorce, and, all this turmoil, any turmoil that he can cause in children's life to separate them from God or from knowing God or forever wanting to have a relationship or know who God is. That's where his focus is at, I believe, like in a lot, at least for me in my life. He wanted me to have a hatred for God, and I did. Like, I didn't want nothing to do with God. If there was a God, well, all these things that happen. And plus, he knows Scripture. He knows Scripture better than probably anybody, And so he uses anything that he can use to separate us from God. And if he can't have your whole life, then he'll take every minute. If he can have a year, he'll take a month. If he can't have a month, he'll take a day. He's going to take what he can take from your life. Even that's fear. God didn't give us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of love and the power and of a sound mind. So anything the enemy can do to get in your head and he wants every second of moment that he can take you away from God. That's what he's going to do. I stole cars. I was a car thief, and so I stole a car, and I got in a high-speed chase, and so I did some time in juvenile hall, and then they let me out on an ankle monitor, and I had already lived in Utah before, so I decided that I wasn't going to stay on the ankle monitor. I was on house arrest. I wasn't allowed to leave my house, so I called a buddy of mine, and I told him to meet me at my house at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had given him some money to go get some drugs and then come back and pick me up, and I cut my ankle monitor off and I jumped the fence and we drove to Utah. And then so another runaway, and I stayed there for a while, and we both got jobs. I worked at a cheese factory. I want to say I was like 16, 17, I don't know. Mario, my buddy, he got a job on a drill rig, and we got an apartment, and we just stayed strung out until I got in trouble again out there, and I ran from there and came back here to California. The thing about my mom is, she was a broken child with a kid, two kids. And when later in life, when I, found out like about her, she had the same stuff go happen to her when she was a little kid. She was molested and she was abused, and so she ran away when she was 14 and ended up pregnant with my brother. And then me shortly thereafter. She was 17 when she got pregnant with me, and so she was just a little kid with no life skills, pretty broken, trying to figure out how to raise two boys, and with the addiction problem, that comes with. I kind of think it's more of a coping mechanism than at that point in your life. You know what I mean? Like for me, drugs and alcohol weren't necessarily my problem; they were my solution to my problem. My problem was me and not being able to deal with how I felt, not being able to cope with all the things that had happened in my life. So that was my solution. That was my sense of ease and comfort, and I searched for it really hard until I found the true source of ease and comfort. My mom ended up marrying the guy that she met in Turlock, and he was a little bit abusive, but I was kind of already grown a little bit, and so he we got into it one day, and the next day when I came home from school, this was what caused the dropout. Actually, I came home from school and my mom said that I was too violent to live in the home, and that I needed to leave. And so I got my bags and I hitchhiked out of town back to Los Banos, and I got a job. My cousin DJ, his dad owned a backhoe service, so he gave me a job, and I worked with him for a while until I got in trouble, and then I went to jail, and I kept getting in trouble, and I would go to bars and I would drink. I was underage, but I had a goatee so I can get in and drink. Sometimes I thought my life was great. Sometimes it was, I'm having fun. I'm having sex with all kinds of different girls. I have a pile of money because I'm selling drugs. I have an endless supply of drugs. You have a whole ton of people who act like they care about you and love you because you have all this stuff going on, And so there's sometimes I thought it was great, absolutely great. And I always, I guess, had a desire for doing the wrong thing, I guess, because like I said, I was an outlaw. I didn't believe in laws of society. I lived by my own set of rules. They're kind of like biker rules. I don't know. And then there's always times when I was like, I can't continue to live like this, And like I said, there's always that little bit of that first part of my life where I knew, like, I'm not living right. This isn't right. But at some point, that's gone and this took over. You know what I mean? And it didn't matter. And but there was a lot of really dark days, and a lot of days that were really, really sad. And I wanted to change, but I didn't know how. I wanted to be different, but I didn't know how. Or a lot of years that I spent in a prison cell or in a jail cell that, I was actually working on myself. I'm going to do different. I'm, exercising every day, eating healthy, there's plenty of drugs in jail, not doing any drugs while I was there. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't pull it off. I didn't have no power. It's never enough. No matter how much of it you have, you're still searching and searching and searching and searching and searching. And it's a nonstop. You're worn out and you're tired and you're broken, and it hurts, but you keep doing it, and you keep going and you keep going because you're searching. And I don't have to search anymore. But believe it or not, that was easy. As destructive as it was, and it's way easier than being accountable, showing up on time, keeping my word, paying my bills, going to work every day. All of these things is being accountable. I never did that. Who cares? Garbage didn't go out, The lights are off, get a candle, whatever, go steal power from the neighbor, and that was easy. But I didn't care about anybody or anything but myself. Everything I did was selfish. Paul, the first guy, he was always in my life. I mean, so as I grew, as I got older, and he seen me struggling a lot in life, and he would always try to help me. So he would help me get jobs. He would get people to hire me, and then he actually he ran an equipment rental company, and I want to say I was 19, 20 years old, and he got me a job at the equipment rental company. Paul, the first guy that my mom was with that raised me when I was a little kid, he's my dad. That's who I consider my dad. Still to this day, that's my dad. So he got me a job at the rental yard, and would always try to teach me how to live right and stuff. I worked at the rental yard for 2 years. He got me certified for a bunch of pieces of equipment, and I became assistant manager of the rental company. And I still partied, you know what I mean, but I just had to kind of maintain somewhat. And I rented a little house out in the country, bought a brand new dirt bike. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but I remember I got myself in trouble again. I was always fighting. I was violent. And so I ended up in trouble. And my buddy that I worked with at the rental yard, his name was Luke. I convinced him, let's leave, let's run off to Wyoming. So I had a little T-Bird, and I had some money, and I had $400, and I was like, so we drove to Laramie, Wyoming, with no destination really in mind. And we got to Laramie, Wyoming, and I got a job, Bighorn Roofing. And so I stayed in Wyoming for about almost a year, and I had a nice house and doing really well. There was no drugs really in Wyoming that I could find, but plenty of alcohol. And then my mom got sick, and so I talked to my mom, and she was sick again. And so I packed up my car, and we drove back to California. And I started selling drugs. I always sold drugs in the middle of not having jobs. That's kind of how I was raised, you just. And I got myself in trouble again, and I was on the run from the cops, and I took off back to Utah. And so
From Nevada?
Back from California. I went to Wyoming, and then my mom got sick, and we went back to California, and then I went back to Utah. While I was in Utah, I got a job at this company called J.T. Thorpe, and we traveled around the United States doing all kinds of factory work, fixing unsound structures. And this is when I got myself in big trouble, because I always needed drugs. So I was buying dope from this guy, and long story short, I ended up robbing him. We kicked his door down and tied him up and took his drugs and his money, and he turned us into the cops. And so I went to prison for 2 years. And I got out of prison January 20th, 2004. And I could pretty much, this part of my life is pretty much, I was 24 years old. Utah didn't want me in their state, and so they gave me an interstate compact and sent me to California. And as soon as I got off the bus in California, my mom introduced me to this lady. She was a baller, and so I started buying drugs from her, and I started selling drugs. And let me tell this part of the story right. So here's what happened. I had a house in Turlock, and I was on parole there. So that house, I kept it really clean, no drugs, no nothing there. So if parole or anything came, I was legit. And so I went to another county to sell my drugs. And one day, this truck rolls up into my driveway, and this girl gets out of the car, and she's like, "My truck's broke down. Can I use your phone?" And that's how I met Brandy. And I ended up working on her truck, and I seen she had some fishing poles in the back of her truck, and I says, "Hey, do you want to go fishing?" and she told me no, that she was just got out of a really abusive relationship, and she was grateful that I fixed her truck, and she drove off. And I didn't know nothing about her. I was like, man. So I didn't see her again for quite a while, and a couple weeks later, I guess, that same truck came pulling up in my driveway, and she was like, hey, you want to go fishing? And from that day forward, we didn't separate. And we stayed together. And we just ran amok. I mean, neither one of us was employable, so I didn't have a job. I was in a gang. I'm a part of a white supremacist gang. I had a big old swastika tattooed on my chest. I'm all covered in these dumb tattoos, and just ran around committing crimes and outrunning the cops and getting in trouble. And about a year went by, and she said she was pregnant. And I decided that we're going to get clean, and we're going to do all this right. But I didn't know how to be clean. I didn't know how to not use drugs. I didn't know how to not sell drugs. I didn't know how to live life like a normal person. So she got clean, and she stayed clean for 11 years. And I had gotten myself in trouble. I had caught 5 felonies while I was still on parole. I caught assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer, evading, possession, transporting, and possession of a stolen vehicle. And I called from jail, and I was like, do not bail me out. I need you to take everything I have, because I had some money saved up, and get me a lawyer. And I was in the infirmary because the cops beat me up pretty bad. I was in the hospital. They call it infirmary, but it's just a hospital inside jail. I was there for 12 days, and she came up with the money to bail me out instead of getting me a lawyer. And they offered me 10 years at 80%, and I filed a lawsuit against California Highway Patrol for the abuse that they did to me. And so when we went to court, they came up with a deal that said, hey, if you drop your lawsuit, we'll drop some of these felonies and get you some county time. So I'm on parole, and I should be going back to prison, but they dropped the assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer. They dropped the possession, and they got me for evading and receiving stolen property, and gave me a year in a county jail. But I didn't turn myself in. I was supposed to turn myself in, and she's pregnant, and she's like, how am I going to do this by myself? I'm not going to be able to do it. And so I was like, well, you don't have to. I'll take care of everything. Let's just go. So we went, and I on the run for a little while, about 5 months, and then I got busted again. And so when my son was born, I was incarcerated, and I made all these promises. Like, when I get out this time, I'm going to do this different. I promise. When I get out this time, I'm going to be a dad. When I get out this time, I'm going to, and it's all the same stuff you say every time. And the truth is that I really, really meant it. Like, I meant it. Like, I really, really meant it. I'm going to do better this time. And I never even made it home. I never made it from the jail to the house. And she would come find me, like, what are you doing? And I would be strung out already. And this went on pretty much for the next 15 years, probably. I was so abusive. I wasn't faithful. And finally, she said she had had enough. I was getting in all these gang fights and getting shot at and doing all this stuff. California's really crazy. I don't know if it's that crazy here in Missouri, but California's really crazy. And so she decided, she got a restraining order on me. Said it's not safe for you to be around me or the kids, so she got a restraining order. And that was kind of like my eye opener a little bit. Like, I was like, okay, I got to straighten up enough, just enough to get this restraining order and all this stuff. And I ended up violating the restraining order, and I ended up getting a terrorist threats on her and my brother's mother-in-law, and I had to go do 14 months. So I went and did my 14 months, and when I got out, I decided, okay, I'm gonna go to college. So I got myself in a program, and I went to college to be a diesel mechanic, and I did really well in the program, and I stayed sober, and I completed the program, and I graduated the college, and I got a job working on school buses. and it was going to be my son's third or fourth birthday, and um, I went to her house even though she had a restraining order on me, and I was like, look, I just want to, see him. Can I just see him? Can I buy him a gift? And she was like, I'll invite you to the birthday party. So she invited me to the birthday party, and we we were like magnets to each other. So she came to me at the birthday party, and she's like, I haven't seen you look this good in a long time, and I want, can we work things out and all this and that? And I was like, absolutely. And that's what I really wanted, but I couldn't stay sober, and this is hard, dude. I've never told my story like this, so this is really difficult. Um,
It's good.
so I had this job for a few years, and I was doing really well at the job, but she kept me at a distance all the time. And I was giving her money every week, and I'm like, look, I'm commuting every day to be a dad. I'm commuting every day to be a boyfriend. I'm like, let's get our own place. And I would give her $1,000 a week, like, here, go get us a place, go get us a place. And she didn't want to. And it was like I was on a schedule, like I was still in prison. You know what I mean? No, I'll come see you on Saturday from this time to this time. You could see your son from this time to this time. And I had been putting in the work. I felt I deserved more. You know what I mean? And the truth of the matter is that I didn't. She had every right in the world to be scared. She had every right in the world to not trust me. She had every right in the world to keep me at a distance, to keep my son and herself safe. Because the people that I ran around with and the things that I did were not conducive to be raising a family. One of the things I deal with today, is that, I wasn't there like I should have been, and I wasn't the dad that I should have been, and I fell short. And I caused harm in my child's life, whom I love. You know, when I think about the love of Jesus, the fact that, he climbed on that cross, would die for me. And, I have that kind of love for my child. I would give my life for his life right now in a heartbeat, no questions asked. If it's me or him, take me. I don't care. I've lived my life. Let him live. And I really wanted to be a dad, and the world would tell me that you don't know anything about being a dad. You don't know anything about how to raise a child. This and that, and it hit me really hard one day. I was thinking about all that, and I was like, wow, I don't know anything about being a dad. But then it came to me that, yeah, I do. All I have to do is do all the things for him that weren't done for me. And I really, really made an attempt at that. And I did coach in sports. And I was there for everything. And well, unless I was in prison or jail, which that was a lot too. But I try not to say anything bad about Brandy's family or anything like that, and her. But they did. They kept him out of my life a lot. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like like I said, I was on a time schedule. I could show up for football practice, show up for baseball practice, show up for everything that I'm supposed to show up for. But I'm on a schedule. You get this much time, this much time, and I did my son a really major disservice in his life because I wasn't able to keep my stuff together. I wasn't able to be consistent in his life and to be the role model, to teach him how to be a man, to teach him how to do certain things. I mean, if anything, I hindered him in life because of my inconsistency. And I can remember being a kid and wanting my dad around, and then I've done the same thing. I was in and out of his life. And then never knowing what you're going to get with me. Are you going to get the, sober, happy, encouraging dad, or are you going to get the strung out dad? Which guy is it going to be? It's that is really hard to talk about. You know what I mean? And it probably should be talked about more. Even when I was clean, I didn't let go of a lot of ties that I had, and I still had to make a little bit of money on the side. You know, this is and it's just how I thought. I did not believe in following the laws of society at all. I was an outlaw. I didn't believe the laws of society did not apply to me whatsoever. And so when I told her, when I invited her to my work one day, I says, hey, look, this isn't working. I can't do this like this anymore. I can't, either we have to be together or we're not. I said, so look, I want you to take a look at something. If I'm not what's going to make you happy, then what's going to make you happy? But think about what you want, and let's have lunch on Friday, and let's figure out what we're doing, because I can't continue to put forth all this effort and be on the back burner all the time. So when Friday came, she didn't call me. We didn't go to lunch, nothing. And so I didn't talk to her no more. I was like, okay, I'm just not going to talk to her. I still went to my son's baseball practices, football practices, and all that stuff. I still coached wrestling and all the things. I was doing all the things I was supposed to be doing, but my nightlife wasn't right, you know? And
what does that mean when you say your nightlife wasn't right?
I'm a drug addict. So I stick a needle in my arm every day, and to be able to get through my day, I use methamphetamines. Even if on the surface people couldn't tell, she knew, and it was obvious to people who knew me. You know what I mean? If I didn't sleep all week. I'd go to work all day, work on school buses, and then at nighttime I'd be out robbing the whole countryside, blind of everything you can get your hands on. If it wasn't bolted down, I was stealing it, you know, and selling it. And I didn't have a conscience. I didn't care. Like I said earlier, I was telling you, like, I didn't know that God could forgive me. If God could forgive me for everything that I had done or the lifestyle that I lived, I didn't talk to her again. And I started, I ended up quitting my job. No, I ended up getting busted on my lunch break for possession for sales. And I ended up losing my job for the school buses. And I just went full, I got bailed out of jail, and then I was dating some other girl, and she found out about that, and she came to me and was like, no, we have to work things out. I can't stand to see you with another woman. And so I was willing to work things out with her, but I was really, in my head, I was really, I really messed up, you know, emotionally, you know, I couldn't, and so these are the things that I did that made me feel like I couldn't be forgiven. And I don't know if you're going to put this part in or not, but I'm just going to be honest with you about what I did. I would go on Megan's Law, and I would search out child molesters that did crimes to children, and I would map out where their houses were at. And I would go to their house, and I would drive up on their lawn, and I'd open the hood of my car, and I'd start spraying water underneath the hood of my car so steam would come off the motor like it was overheating. And then I'd knock on the door and ask for help. And when they'd open the door, I'd kick the door in, and I'd go in, and I'd tie them up, and I'd take their stuff, and I would stab them, and I would do all this crazy stuff. And I did this. This is how I made my living after I lost the job with the school buses. This is how I made my living for about a year and a half. I would go on Megan's Law, and I'd go from house to house, every 1, 2, 3, 4 houses a week. And if you didn't, my goal was that for you not to answer the door, for nobody to be home, and then I could just kick the door in and go in and get whatever I wanted. Get the TVs. You look for TVs. You look for guns. You look for cash. You look for jewelry. You know what I mean, stuff like that, and just load up the car. Have, you know, me and 2 of my friends. They're my friends, and I did that for a long time. And I used to think that I was really good at it, like I was like invisible, Mr. Invisible. And later on, I realized I probably really wasn't that good at it, but it was the people whose houses I was going to that the cops really weren't that interested in trying to find the person who had done it, I guess, maybe. I ended up in jail. I don't remember for how much time or what it was, but I was in this jail cell, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and tears just started coming down my face, and I did not like what it was looking back at me. I was a monster. I was a monster. I was an absolute horrible person, and I didn't care about anybody or anything but myself. Looking back, I didn't care what those people had done. I didn't care who they had hurt. That all truly didn't matter to me. I mean, it was an excuse to have a victim, is what it was. It wasn't, because I didn't care about those. Now I do, because I'm not strung out. But I didn't care what they had done. But I had a good. These are the people that I'm going to victimize, and here's my reason why. It wasn't like I was taking what I got from there and helping people. I was taking what I got from there to put more drugs in my system, and to continue to live the lifestyle that I was living. And to not be employed, and to not be accountable, and to not, and I think, well, I know that I didn't have a relationship with God at all, nor did I want one with God. And I didn't know that California is different, but I didn't know anything about God. And I used to think, well, if there's an almighty God, then, why did all this stuff happen to me when I was a kid? Why did I have to go through all these things and be hurt the way I was hurt, and the molestation and the abuse, and how come all these other kids had families that buy them trucks and do, you know what I mean? It's materialistic world, you know what I mean? And when you have nothing, I had to get everything myself, and I didn't never do it right. So my life was just out of control. This is what I was doing. I was robbing, pillaging, stealing, and then I was fornicating with women and doing everything that I could do to kill myself. Basically, I was just living to die. I was just taking up space. And me and Brandy been having a lot of problems. This has been going on from 2004 until I met her in 2004 till 2021. Yeah, and she was clean for 11 years, and then when I left her, and then she found out I was with somebody else, she relapsed, and she started using it again so that she could run around with me, so that I wouldn't be with other women. And I did the one thing that I swore I'd never do, and which I had never done to anybody else. I gave her first shot of dope. Like, she used, but she didn't slam dope. She wasn't an IV drug user. And I watched her life spin out of control. And our relationship really spun out of control. And our kids weren't with us no more. Now they're with her parents. And we were chasing each other around the countryside, and being abusive to each other, cheating on each other, hurting each other. But we loved each other. It's so sickening how the disease of alcohol and how drugs and alcohol can just destroy a person like that. But I was always tripping because it would take her forever. We're tweakers. Of course it takes forever to do anything. Our train of thought is, oh yeah, look, something shiny over here. Oh, look it over here. And so one day we had been just having so many problems. And our relationship was pretty much done, And that day, I decided, you know what, no matter what, when I see her today, I'm just going to be happy to see her. We hadn't had a conversation probably in 6 months that wasn't an argument. We hadn't had a regular just hang out, be friends, go to dinner, anything, and forever. It was just always turmoil and chaos, unless we were committing a crime together, And then I'm just gonna be happy today when she gets here. I'm just gonna be happy to see her. And I don't know if she was thinking the same exact thing, but she showed up to the house, and she got out of the car with a smile on her face, and she said, "Shane, can I talk to you?" And I said, "Yeah, let's talk." And she said, "The only way that we are going to make it is if we give our lives to God. She was raised in church, and I never want anything to do with God. But at that point in time, I'm willing to do anything. I'm willing to do anything if it will, you know, get my kids back in my life. You know, there's that little conscious of that little boy that I talked about that was raised right. There was that person was still in there, but he was so lost, you know, by everything else. And she said, let me pray with you. And we prayed. And we walked around the property and we talked for hours like it was the first day we met. And we decided we were going to get our kids back, and we were going to get our lives together, and we were going to do what we were going to do. And I really, you know, like when I get out of jail, all those times I said that I really meant it. I really, like, this was something different. Like, I meant it. Like, we can do this. And there was something. So that next morning, I was supposed to be working on a tractor. Like I said, I was a diesel mechanic, and once in a while I'd get a little side job here and there. And I was working on a tractor or a truck, I don't remember, down the road from my house, and I had $100 in my pocket, and I was going to go buy some parts and go fix this tractor and make a little bit of money or whatever I was doing. I was probably trying to steal the tractor if I was really thinking about it right, but I had to get in there somehow, you know. But I don't know. But she was excited. She's like, I want to go see the kids and this and that. And I was like, well, here, take this $100 and go see the kids, and I'll see you tonight. And she says, no, you need the money, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, I'll figure it out. Just go see the kids. And she was a vet tech, and we were always rescuing animals. So we lived out, at that point in time, we lived out in the country on Volta Road, and it's tomato season. And tomato trucks are just running back and forth up and down our road. And we had this bull mastiff. His name was Bo, and he was about this big. And so anyhow, she took off to go see the kids, and I went and hustled up some money, went and did what I was going to do. And on my way home, it's July 9th, and it's 108 degrees outside in California. And California has all the waterways, so I would always stop at the canal and let my dog swim. But he would never go in all the way. He would just go in up to his belly, and he would stop. So that day I was like, you know what? Today you're going to swim. So I stripped down in my underwear on the canal, and I jumped in the canal, and then he come swimming after me. And I looked down the canal, and here come this big old cloud of dust. You'd have to know how California was to know what I'm talking about. But so I'm watching this car come driving up, and here comes Brandy driving up on me on the canal. And she's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm teaching my dog how to swim. I'll see you at the house. So I got the dog, got dressed, got the dog, drove to the house, and I had 3 driveways, and she would always park next to the road. Because, and for good reason, you know, because you never know what you're going to get with me. You didn't know if it was going to be violent. You didn't know if you were going to have to run for your life. You didn't know what was going to happen. And that we'd always fight about that. Like, why do you park next to the road? All the animals are excited to see you when you get here. They go out by the road. The diesel trucks are running back and forth. And so when I pulled up, I'm telling her, why are you parked by the road? Look, Bo's in the road. And our bull mastiff was in the road. I said, no, get Bo. She didn't even look. She ran out in that road, and that diesel truck hit her right in front of me. And I remember I only looked at her one time. I kept my eyes down, but I held her hand until she took her last breath. And I was screaming, I'm like praying, like, God, I'm not ready to let her go. I'm telling her, you can do this. You're the strongest person I ever met. You can pull through this. You can pull through this. And I don't know how long I was there like that, but the paramedics were telling me, you got to let go. She's gone. I was like, I don't want her to be gone. I'm not ready for her to be gone. And I definitely didn't want anything to do with God at that point. It was the day after we prayed. And I really got off the hook. I ruined every vein in my body in less than a year. I started doing things to I wanted to die, but I didn't want to kill myself. So I started doing things that I shouldn't have been doing to people that I shouldn't have been doing it to. In California, the cartels are really thick, and there's a lot of drugs. And I started robbing the cartels at gunpoint, and then telling them that I did it. And we started having shootouts and all this stuff, and my cars were full of bullet holes, my house was full of bullet holes, and I was just trying to die, but I just didn't die, thank God. And finally one day he's like, you know what, I'm just done. I can't do this no more. I cannot go on living like this another moment. And a friend had pulled up to my house, and I said, hey, give me a ride. And I got a ride to the back of Brandy's mom and dad's property, and I said, don't tell nobody where you took me, don't tell nobody that you've seen me, don't tell no one nothing, just leave me right here. And I walked to the back where her car was parked, and I got on my knees, and I was going to take my life. I was done. I just couldn't live like that anymore. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like being in the pitch black, freezing cold with no clothes. It was just the darkest, loneliest, most horrible feeling you could possibly imagine. I would never want my worst enemy, someone that I would never want anybody to ever feel the way I felt in that moment. And I remember I had tears coming down my face, and I'm screaming at God. I'm like, God, are you real? I'm like, look, God, if you're real and you could help me in this moment, I will serve you. With everything I have, I will serve you. And in that moment, my expectation was for things out here to change. I don't know what God was going to do. I don't know who God was. And in that moment, something in here changed. Like I felt a peace, a calm, like stand up, it's going to be okay inside of me. And I was like, wow, there is God. And I have not put nothing in my body to change the way I think or feel since that moment. Every waking moment of my life, I needed to have methamphetamines, alcohol, marijuana, something in my system to change the way I thought or feel. And since the moment that I had my encounter with God, I guess, I have not put nothing in my body to change the way I think or feel. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do drugs. I don't put anything in my body to change the way I think or feel. The only thing that Christ is in me now, and I'm complete. And I don't need to try to fill a void all the time with something. As of before, I always was trying to fill a void. Well, I've been in multiple programs. And there was always like, you have to go to church if you're in a program. You have to go to a certain amount of meetings and stuff like that. So I had a concept of what other people would say God was. But and there, how many times, I couldn't count how many times that somebody said, hey, let's say this prayer of salvation, that is going to, they could check it in their book to say that, oh, we got one saved tonight. But I never read any of the scriptures. I didn't believe any of it was true. I always thought it was just like some story that people told it. It just seemed so far-fetched. Like, really? I don't know about that. That's, So I had a concept of somewhat what God was, or what worked for other people, maybe, but it wasn't for me. I had never read a scripture in my life. I'd been to church services, and I think a lot of the times I was so turned off by the church services because it seemed like it was all about money. It was like, how many offerings can you take up in one church service? And I think a lot of churches use scripture in the wrong way, I think. And I see a lot of them where it is about the money. It is about, a performance on the stage, a production, so to speak. And we go to church, and then we leave church and we live the same way we lived, we live like hell all week, and then come to church on Sunday and check a box and be like, oh, I went to church and I went to Bible study, but it doesn't really matter how I live throughout the week, because God's going to forgive me, and then I paid my tithes, and look at this production that we put on. And I just didn't want anything to do with it until that moment when I cried out to God. My favorite saying is, got fruit. Because that moment when I cried out to God and Jesus came into my heart that day, and I am not the person that the person that did all those crazy crimes, that outran the cops all those times, that was a violent, was that person's nailed to the cross. I'm not him. I was still lost, and I had all these problems. I created a mess for myself, and I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared of the people or the things that I had done. I never been scared, but I knew like there's something's different in my life, and I wanted to do something different with my life, and I made a decision that I was going to do something different. So about 3 weeks went by, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of lost. I don't know what I'm doing. So I called my brother, and I was like, hey, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I need a fresh start. And I got on a Greyhound bus, and I came out here with 2 backpacks here to Ozark, Missouri. Me and my brother, we never really got along that good. I love my brother, and we're all each other has for family, and we're there for each other, but we just can't live together. So I stayed at his house for about a month. Yeah, here in Ozark, and I ended up not being able to get along with him, and I had gotten a job at Economy Tire, and I was going to this AA meeting out here called Courage to Change, and I didn't have a car, I didn't have a social security card, I didn't have nothing when I got here. I didn't have nothing, and I wanted to help people. All I knew is I want to help people, and I didn't even know how to have a bank account. I never had a bank account in my life, and Rod hired me for $17.50 an hour, and I rented a room from Miss K, and I would sit on her front porch with her every day after work and talk about God's gangsters and how I was going to start this program. And at that time, when I first started working at Economy Tire, and I didn't know anything about God, and I didn't know like what the blood represented, and the fact that when he got on that cross, that not only did he do it for me, he did it for everybody. He took the sin of the whole world in one time. I just think about all the stuff that I've done, like, oh my gosh. And then when you think about the sin of the whole world at one time, like that is absolutely insane, But he loved us that much, and that's that blood that covered me. That moment when I cried out to God, I was a new creation. My heart changed. There was a heart. Romans 10:9 says, "Believe it in your heart and confess it with your mouth." The believing in your heart part, that is the most important part for me. Like that's where the change came in. Like I knew that God, when I cried out to God, I lied to anybody. If I could get what I wanted out of life, I would lie. Whatever it took, I'm gonna get what I want. But when I cried out to God and asked him if he was real and if he could help me in that situation, and that I would serve him, I meant that. Like that was, and I believe that I meant it to the point where I've continued every single day since that moment to strive to be the person that I'm supposed to be for him, to keep my word and say, I will serve you. And that's my goal every day, is to serve God to the best of my ability and to help other people. When I cried out to God and I asked him if he was real and said that I would serve him, something changed in here. But nothing out here was any different. But he gave me the ability at that point, with him in me, to be able to deal with the things out here, because he was in control of my life from that point forward. In that time, I knew nothing of what he was or who he was. And like I said earlier, that I didn't really believe that I could be forgiven for all the things that I'd done. So at that point in my life, it was by my works. I thought that my works had to prove something to him for me to be able to be saved. And that's not the truth. The works is just condition of the heart, that because the heart's changed, it doesn't matter. And I look at the thief on the cross. All he said was, remember me. Like he said, look, I deserve what I got. And when he said that, that was a repentant heart. And Jesus looked over him and said, you'll be with me in paradise. Like, that's the first dude I want to talk to when I get to heaven. Like, dude, how did you get here? Dude said I can come. He said I'm in. So I don't want to make it sound like I can do something, but at that point in my walk, I felt like that's what I had to do. And it's by his strength, because and everything that I have and everything that I've worked for is his. It's because of him that I have anything. I have nothing without him. I am nothing without him. Coming from that child, that broken child, I was like, well, I got through that. I lived through that. And then from the molestation to the abuse to the abandonment, to all these things that I went through, then the addiction that took over, that was just insane, that destroyed my life and everybody's life around me. Everybody that I came in contact with was like a tornado had, come over the land. So I had been through all of these things, and I made it through all these things, and then God changed my heart. And the reason I wanted to start the program was that I found some freedom, and I wanted to share it with other people. Like, my desire was, if I could go through these things and I could take all these things that I have gone through and I could help other people get through their things, and they could have a relationship with Christ. And at that time, see, I didn't know that it wasn't about me. I didn't realize that I couldn't do anything for anybody, but I know a guy, So there was probably some selfish or maybe immature Christian motives in the beginning. Like, it wasn't about being famous, or it wasn't about money, but I did think that I was able to do these things that I probably really wasn't able to do. But I knew that I wanted to help people, and I knew that I had caused so many people so much pain and did so much stuff in my life that was just, I felt unforgivable in a sense, that if I wanted to give back, and I just wanted to be a part of other people's lives changing, I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know what it looked like. I still don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to mess this up, dude, I promise. But, I know a guy. But, so God's Gangsters, originally, I was sitting at my house with a buddy of mine, and I was in California, and we're getting high, and we had Harleys, you know what I mean? And we're running around with the Hells Angels, and we're doing all this crazy stuff, and we're thinking about, possibly becoming Hells Angels. And it wasn't even my idea. My buddy, his grandfather was a pastor. Like I said, I didn't have anything to do with God or anything. And he says, hey, bub, why do we want to be angels of hell? We could be gangsters for God, And that stuck with me. I never forgot that. So that's how the name we got, God's Gangsters, came about. And then so I'm working over here at Economy Tire, and I had this grand idea. I'm going to start this program, God's Gangsters. And so I was sitting there with Miss Kay, and I was telling her how I was going to start this program, and I didn't know how to save money. I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to make a bed. My life skills sucked, but I knew how to work hard. And so she was on me. Miss K was on me. If I spilled a couple grounds of coffee on the counter and I didn't clean it up, she would leave a sticky note on the coffee pot. If you don't know how to clean up after yourself, you can get your stuff and you can get out of my house. And she was on me. She loved me. She just wanted me to be able to follow through with my goals. And every morning I'd get up and I'd clean the house up, and I'd leave her a little note, Miss K, I love you, have a blessed day. And then, so I came from work one day, and I'd get my paycheck, and I'd give her my paycheck every week. She'd take my check and she'd stick my money in an envelope. She'd take $50 for rent and give me X amount of dollars for my groceries for the week. And that's it. And I had these shot out work boots. I was going to go buy some some shoes and some clothes. And she said, "What's wrong with what you have?" I'm like, I get greasy and I don't have nothing nice. And she's all, "Do you want to start a program or do you want to have a bunch of nice stuff?" She's all, "You can have stuff later. You don't, your boots that you have right there are fine. You have a pair of church clothes. What else do you need?" And I'm like, "You're right, Miss K, I don't need anything." And so I kept saving my money. And so she had control of my money. Like, and I was okay with that. And we'd sit on the porch and I probably wore her ear out like every day. I didn't even have a car. And one day she comes to me, she says, "Honey, you know what? I have $1,000 for you to help you get a car and you could pay me back." And so we found this car. Got it down to $500, and I had to put a few $100s into it to get it fixed. And so I had a car, and then that was the car that I had all the way through till we started the program. And she wouldn't let me spend my money. I believe that she believed in God, but as a relationship and like reading the Bible, and I don't think that she was a believer like that. Until I think I was constantly sitting there reading the Bible and talking about Jesus and going to different stuff and hanging out with her. And yeah, so she grew in her relationship with the Lord. And I don't think I had anything to do with it, but I just think that the Holy Spirit was around, and God does what God does when he's brought into the room, I guess. And so so she passed away recently. She had cancer and stuff like that, but and Miss K was my number one fan. She was like always telling me, "You can do it, honey. I believe in you. You can do it." And I got to be a part of seeing her get baptized and her give her life to Christ. But I know for a fact I couldn't have got to where I've gotten today if it wouldn't have been for her encouraging me and giving me a place to start from and believing in me and stuff like that. And so I could fix cars, so I would go on the marketplace and I'd find a car that I wanted to buy to fix to sell, and I'd have to get her permission. Like, "Can I spend some of my money? Miss K, look at I could buy this for $1,000 and I could sell it for $2,500 and this would." "Okay, hon, we can do that." And so she was my sidekick. She would go with me everywhere. And so I would buy cars and flip them and sell them. I would mow lawns. I would do anything I could. I was cutting firewood. I was selling cords of firewood. And I would do anything I could to make some money. And at the end of that 6 months, I had that $20,000 saved. I had like $24,000. I didn't know what I was aiming for. I just was trying to, I didn't have an amount in mind. I just wanted enough to be able to start the program. And I didn't know what that took. And when I had saved up that money, I started looking for a house, and nobody would give me a chance at a house. Nobody. And but God had a plan. God had a plan. So I want to back up a little bit. So when I first moved in with Miss K, I heard about a Bible study. It was going to be on a Wednesday night, and I walked into this Bible study, and there's like a bunch of little old ladies and older gentlemen, and I had all these tattoos. My pants are hanging down. I got my hat on all weird like I do now, and I walk in and everyone's like, "Oh," and I sat through the Bible study, and at the end of the Bible study they were talking about how the kids and how the youth are so broken and how this and that, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to start a program. And by the end of it all, like I had made a friend. I made a bunch of friends. All those ladies would hug me and love on me and encourage me to keep going after my goals and you can do it. We believe in you. We see Jesus all over you. And and Randy was so encouraging. He's on our podcast in the morning. If you ever watch the podcast, you'll see who Randy is. And Randy started helping me. He's 70. He's going to be 75 years old. This was a few years ago. He was in his 70s. He would come out and cut firewood with me. Never asked for any of the money. Split firewood with an axe for hours. I mean, he would just help me any way he could to help me get the money together to start this program. So he's one of my best friends still today. And so God started putting these people in my life, just lining it up, for direction, for prayer, for support, for encouragement, and Miss K was my number one fan. I know for a fact I couldn't have got to where I've gotten today if it wouldn't have been for her encouraging me and giving me a place to start from and believing in me and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, so that part was amazing, and I was going to the Saturday night service, and I kept telling the pastor there that he also had recovery houses and stuff, and I kept telling him I'm going to start a recovery ministry and this and that, and he was telling me you need to slow down. You don't even have I didn't even have 6 months sober. I had a little over 6 months sober by the time I had that money. I didn't have any life skills, anything like that. You got to do all this stuff, and I was like, to me, it was like, you're not God. This is what God put on my heart to do. I was on fire. Nothing's going to put this fire out. I'm just going to keep going for it, keep going for it. And I'm glad that I did, because you kind of, as a person, the flesh takes over a little bit here and there, and I get discouraged. And I'm glad that in that time I didn't get discouraged, and I kept pushing for my goal, because, what if it would have taken me 5 years? I don't know if I would have followed through. I believe that God knew knew that I was I was on limited time for the fire. No, and I'm still on fire for Jesus, but I see a lot of people get on fire and then kind of. So that's how we started the program. I took that money and I tried to find a house. Nobody would give me a time of day. Nobody would give me a time of day. I didn't have any credit. I'd never owned anything. I never had a job for more than a year, a couple years. I didn't have anything to say, hey, I'm worthy of this place, and I've been looking at houses, and everybody's like, nope, nope, nope. And I was getting really discouraged on the house thing, and I found a house on Marketplace. It was a lease to own, and the guy, I messaged him. Finally, he messaged me back and said he was going to have an open house, and I went over there and I looked at the house, and it was a tiny house, 2-bedroom house on the north side of Springfield, but it was in my budget. I could afford it. And after I got to the open house, and I'm just standing in the kitchen, and I remember being nervous. I was nervous, like God, I'm praying. I'm like, I need this house. Like, this has got to be my house. And the guy comes to me. He's like, do you want to look around? And I didn't. I needed the house. I didn't care if the plumbing was bad. I didn't care what it was. I needed the house, And
why? Why'd you need the house?
I just wanted to start my program. I wanted to have a place that was mine, and that I could share with other men, and have a place for them to come to change their life. That's the whole purpose of what I do, is to have a place for people to come to change their life and to get their life straight. It doesn't matter where you've been or what you've been through or what your problems are. It's how we can help, And so I said, no, I don't want to look around. I'm going to wait for you to get done talking to all these people, and then I'm going to get my house. And he just kind of looked at me and he's like, okay. And I was hearing all these people, and I was getting discouraged, because they're like, okay, I got this, my credit score's this, and I make X amount of dollars, and I'm like, oh man, but I had enough money that I could pay for the lease for a whole year. The lease to own is a process to start to own a house, and I had enough money to do that. And so when he came and talked to me, I says, look, I don't have any credit. I've never had anything in my life, but what I do have is I have enough money right now, cash, $100 bills, to pay you for the whole year right now. And he says, okay, well, I'm going to have to talk to my dad. I'll call you and we'll move forward if he wants to do it. And I said, okay. So I left, and I didn't make it, not even a block. And he called me. He's like, my dad says it's a go. Can we meet tomorrow? So I met him the next day, and I cashed him out $100 bills, signed a lease to own for the house for a year, paid for the whole year. So I didn't have to worry about rent or bills or anything for a whole year. All I had to worry about was electricity, garbage, water, that stuff, and groceries, And so that was okay, because it takes a lot to feed these guys and to get started and to get, once income starts coming in, the house pays for itself. The guys, they pay their rent and they get a job, and you feel good about yourself, and you pay X amount of dollars, and that's what keeps the program going, And so I have to realize every day that it's not about me. In fact, it has nothing to do with me. The least of me that there could be, the better off that I am. And at the beginning, when I first started following Jesus, when I first got saved, God bless Randy Kirk. I love him. Because he'll call you on stuff, and he'll tell you the honest to God truth. And I used to, so I stopped. I hadn't given my testimony or talked or got on stage or at all for about a year and a half. So when I first got saved, and I was always trying to be on stage, I was trying to do this, trying to do that, and Randy was like, Shane, that reeks with pride. What you're doing reeks with pride. And I had to take a look at it, and I was doing it. I was doing wrong. I was doing things. This is what Satan got thrown out of heaven for. You know what I mean? He didn't want the worship to go to God. He wanted the worship to come to him. And even though it could go through him to God, he wanted to be glorified in it. And so that's dangerous. You know what I mean? And I realized that. And so I didn't speak for a long time. I'll pray with you. I'll talk with you. And I'll share my testimony on a one-on-one level. But I'm not getting out in front of nobody. I don't want to glorify Shane in anything that I do. I want to be humble. I don't want, that's kind of gross. You know what I mean? When you think about it. And so I had to learn, like, what am I doing? Am I doing this check my motives? And, even with what we're doing right here, I had to pray about it. Brooks had asked me to give my testimony at Living Proof, and I said, okay. And that's the first time I had done it in a long, long time. I want my motives in everything that I do to glorify God and not Shane. I want the time that we spend here, I don't want it to glorify me or anything that I've done, but if it can help somebody else, or somebody else can see that Jesus is in me and that he's the reason I am where I'm at today, has nothing to do with me and has everything to do with him. That's the most important thing, I think. I got this little deal that I do, and when I go to do something, and what are we doing this for? Are you doing it for you, or are you doing it to glorify God? And if it's not to glorify God, I don't do it. I don't like compliments. I don't know. I don't like, like the pats on the back. Oh, look, you guys are doing so great, and you're doing this now. It's not about. Give God the glory. It's not me. If you take and the truth of the matter is I could prove that. I can prove that it has nothing to do with me, and it's not about me. Because if you look at the first 40 years of my life, there's times, like I told you, when I was going to get out, and like I meant it. With every fiber of my being, I meant it. I'm going to do better this time. I truly meant it. But I couldn't do it. So I always had a problem with women. I always had a problem with not being loyal. I had a problem with not, sleeping with a lot of different women. And I knew that if I wanted God to continue to bless me and the blessings, that I had to change all this stuff had to go. I had to fight my flesh. I had to basically picking up my cross, not feeding my flesh, making a decision that I'm going to pray to God instead of following my lustful eyes and instead of thinking about women in a way that I shouldn't. So, because I was really bad about that. Like, that was my whole thing. I always wanted to, any woman to give me attention, I was going to give her attention, So I had made a decision, like, okay, I got rid of the drugs and alcohol. So the next woman that lays in my bed is going to be my wife. I'm going to do things the way God designed them to be done. I'm going to follow through. And so in that, I told God, I said, look, I'm going to live for you. I'm going to do these things. I'm not going to fornicate. I'm not going to look at pornography. I'm not going to, all this stuff. I want to be able to hand my phone to anybody. I never could do that before. I want to be able to, I want a child, here you go, you can play games on my phone and know that there's nothing in there that is going to be disgraceful to God or to me or anything else like that. So, I couldn't do that without Jesus in my heart and in my life, And believe me, when I made that commitment, the enemy is out to kill, steal, and destroy. Let me tell you. And I'll tell you a little story of something that happened that you can put it in or not. There is this lady, this young girl, not young girl, but this young lady that I went out with a couple times, and we hung out a little bit, and she was kind of coming on to me pretty strong, and I told her, hey, look, I'm gonna live my life a certain way. I'm gonna honor God, and the next woman that lays in my bed is gonna be my wife. Well, when I said that, I mean we're gonna be married, not I'm gonna marry you if you sleep with me type thing, you know. And so she was a cute girl, and she was fun, and we liked the same music. We hang out, you know what I mean. And if I was going through something, she would help me get my business cards for the ministry. Help me with, because I'm computer illiterate, so she would help me with all like emails and all this other stuff. And she's at my house, and there's just her and I at the house. None of the guys are there. And I was like, I'm gonna use the restroom. And when I came out of the restroom, she was naked in my bed. And you want to talk about being tempted, you know. And I mean, it was probably one of the hardest things I'd done since I'd been sober, was to politely tell her, look, no offense, you're a very beautiful woman, but I need you to put your clothes on and I need you to leave. And I prayed, and I said, God, you know, I don't know how to get, you know, you have to protect me from these types. I can't do that. There's no way I'd be able to do that twice, you know. And it just seemed like the more I didn't want to, because I wanted to, but I wanted to honor God. I wanted to honor what He has done in my life, and the fact that, you know, He's been faithful to me ever since I accepted Jesus into my heart. You know, He has blessed me every single day. And it's not, you know, it's not like I'm sitting around waiting for God to do something. I'm asking God, if you open a door, I'll go through it. If you show me a direction, I'll go for it. And so I lived in the program for 2 years. And these guys would come, and they would come with all their stuff. You know, you come with your arms completely full of all these things that have happened in your life, and your guard's up, and you're not going to let anybody get close to you, and you're not going to you're going to keep everybody at a distance, you know. And you start seeing these guys like start putting this stuff down. They start picking up the word. They start, you know, you see a guy get a job who's never had a paycheck before, and they start feeling good about themselves. You see a guy, you know, who doesn't have any teeth, and you know, next thing you know, they're able to afford to get some teeth, their dentures, or whatever. You know what I mean? You see a guy meet a woman and do it the way that God designed it to be done, and get married and have children, and you know what I mean? Like, you can't put a price tag on that. There's nothing better than that. And God allowing me, the guy that, you know, was a total wreck and dishonest and disloyal, allowing me to be a part of these people's lives while this happens. It's the absolute most amazing thing you can imagine. I mean, there's nothing more amazing than that. You know, it's that faith thing, I think, you know, we have a problem with. How can I have faith in something I can't see or touch or smell or feel, so to speak? And that blind faith. And I think for me, it's like, you don't have to have blind faith. I don't have to have blind faith. The miracle of God is evident if we open our eyes and we look around. You know what I mean? And I could use anybody that's around me as an example, or myself as an example, because I shouldn't be here. You know, I tell them about what's happened in my life and where I've been and the things that have happened, and the fact that, you know, if God can show me favor and change my heart and look at where I'm sitting, I don't belong where I'm at. He's done all this in my life. You know, that's tangible faith. You know, it's something you could see that's actually happened. You know what I mean? And if I use Kevin or any of the number of other guys and what God's done in their life as soon as they started, you know, you don't even have to believe. You could just start trying these things and see what He does, and because He'll do it, He'll work in it. So I was at the Saturday night church service, and Miss Vicky comes to me, and she's talking to me about, I'm trying to work on my house to make it bigger because there's a garage in the back that I started building into another room and all this other stuff. And she came to me and she was like, well, why don't you let me help you with maybe getting another place, a bigger place for you and your guys, and this and that. And we become friends, and I ended up meeting her daughter, which is my wife. I'm married now. God has blessed me. And so I met Miss Vicky, and she's awesome, and she wanted to help me. But I was like, I had never had anybody been like, here, let me help you in a way that was like, and so I was thrown off. I was like, I don't know about, it was awkward. It was uncomfortable to me that somebody seen value in what I was doing. Not that it was me, but, seen value and seen, like, she even told me, she said, Shane, I've been watching you for months. She'd been going to that church. I never talked to her. And she's like, I've been watching you, and your walk matches your talk, and I'd like to help. I'd like to help you, your ministry grow or whatever. And I didn't take the help. I didn't know how to take the help, I guess, maybe. I don't know. So Kevin, he's the assistant director of God's Gangsters. And it was just after I had met Pastor Buddy. And so I still had to use my Google Maps to get home from work in Springfield. And so I leave Economy Tire, and it's just, that rain you get here, that the raindrops are the size of golf balls, and it's just dumping down rain, and I'm trying to figure out how to get home. And every time my phone would ring, the maps would turn off, and the screen would come up, and there's some number I've never seen before, and I keep ending the call. I'm trying to get home, and it keeps calling me back over and over. So I get to the house, and I'm frustrated. I'm like, and I didn't have any beds. We were already full, and I was stressed out because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue what I was doing with this program. The one thing is, I prayed for God to send me the men that would help me do what I was supposed to do, right? And put the men in my life to help me learn how to be a man and to help me learn how to do what I was supposed to do. So I answered this phone, and I got all these guys in the house, and nobody's got a job but me. So I'm supporting 6 guys, their groceries, their cigarettes, their, everything that these guys, you know what I mean? We're just starting. And I answer the phone, and it's Kevin. And on the other side of the phone, he says, I'm like, what do you want? He's like, I surrender. I can't go on living like this for another day. And I was like, I don't have a bed. He's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, where are you at? I'm going to come pick you up. And so he gave me an address, and I grabbed one of the guys from the program. I says, hey, we're going to go get a new guy. He's like, where are we going to put him? I said, we'll put him on the couch. And I type in the address, and it's, like I said, it's dumping down rain, and my maps took me 45 minutes the wrong direction. And I told him, I'll be there in 15 minutes to pick you up. Had it not been raining, he would have left. I'm out of here. He was out there with his bicycle waiting for the rain to stop when I pulled up so he could leave. And I pulled up, and we loaded him up in the car, and he was like, it was summertime rain, so I'm wearing a wife beater tank top, and this guy Joseph that was with us, he had his guitar, and he's playing a song, and we look all weird. I got my hat on all sideways, and he's like, oh wow, what am I getting myself into? I was like, come on, let's go. And he was like, okay. And he was really like, I'm going to get away from these guys as soon as I can. Like, these guys are nuts. But we got to the house, and I took him in the kitchen, and I had just bought all kinds of groceries and stuff. And I was like, look, eat, get some rest. We'll figure everything. It's like, I can eat whatever I want. I said, eat as much as you want, whatever you want. Just, you look like you're hungry, eat, And so his plan was to take a shower, eat some food, get a nap, and then he was going to jam. That next day, he got sick, like bedridden sick. And all the guys in the house, they were like, hey, taking him food, like loving on him and helping him and taking care of him. And it was like 3 or 4 days. And he was like, man, these people were weird, but they really care. Like that's what we just, I wanted, when I started the program, God started the program, but when I'd been in a lot of programs, and I never felt like the program really cared about the people. They cared about the money. The programs I was in, they would give you a ride to work on payday, or stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I wanted it to be more like a family, a group of people who really loved each other, and to help each other get through their stuff. And so I watched Kevin go through so much stuff, and every day when he would leave, I would think he's not coming back. He's not coming back, and he was just going through. And I'm not going to tell his story, but he was just going through some crazy, crazy trials. And he never lost. He'd come back. Every day he'd show back up. And he become my best friend. We become inseparable. And I watched him go from his regular little job he had. He got a new career. He started making a good living. He met an awesome woman. He ended up, he's married now. He's got 2 children. He's assistant director of our program. And he's helped this program and helped so many guys coming in on this program. And that's what we do this for. Like that, it's just the most amazing thing. And I got guy after guy after guy that I could tell you about that their life has been changed. You know what I mean? And so salvation is free. It's a gift. You know what I mean? It's not something that you have to work for. Jesus did all the work. The work's already been done. He's already conquered. But the works comes after. I have a hard time believing in salvation of people. I mean, okay, how do I say this without... I'm just going to say it. I have a hard time believing that, I'm saved, but I'm going to live like this. You know what I mean? For me, it's like, I don't want to do anything that's going to be upsetting to God. You know what I mean? I don't want to, and I know that I do. There's nobody that doesn't. We all do. But it's like, once that heart changed, faith without works, the works is the fact that my heart is changed, and now I want to serve the one and only true God. Now I want to do things that's pleasing to God. I want to do what God's called me to do. And what has God called me to do? To know Him and make Him known. And so the works thing is, you don't have to do nothing. You're saved. But would you want, if you really, really had an encounter with God and your heart is changed, wouldn't you want to share that with other people? Like, how could you not want other people to have what you have? If you know what I mean, it does. So the works thing, I mean, it's not a requirement. The thief on the cross, he's sitting with Jesus right now. He did nothing, But for me, it's like, I want to share this with other people. I want other people to know who He is and that it works. Like, it really works, And it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy. In fact, the truth is, this right here is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Following Jesus, trying to not live for myself, not be a disgusting, foul, horrible person, all to try to do what God called me to do and be who He wanted me to be, and to walk and have my walk and my talk match. This is way harder than kicking in doors, than committing crimes, than spending my life in prison, than all of that, everything that I've ever done. This is the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life, by far. Because I'm a human, I'm wrapped in flesh. And my flesh wants to take over all the time. It's a constant battle every single day to invite Jesus into every moment instead of... And I'm not perfect. Don't get me wrong. I fall short. But to take up my cross and to not follow my flesh. Every day's a battle. Every day's a battle, and I'm gonna fall short every day, and I know that. And tomorrow I want to do better than I did today, and the next day I want to do better than that. And the goal is to try to be better every day, and to do it in a way that's attractive to other people. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. By far the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. And it's not easy. Following Jesus is not easy. Especially when so many people have a bad taste in their mouth about Christianity, about the church, about and this is not what we have done. We created that, and how do you fix it? I mean, I believe it's fixable. Stop judging people. Stop looking down in people's nose. Oh, Mr. Fancy Pants Christian, stop doing that. We're all the same. We all deserve Jesus. If you come in, I don't care who you are, what you look like, what you smell like, where you've been, or how much you have, or how little you have. The hardest people to reach, I think, are the people that have the most. People who have absolutely nothing, that are struggling to eat and struggling to get through the day. It's easier for us to find faith in God. You know what I mean? When we're fighting for things, and then what God starts doing is He starts opening doors and giving us little bits of Himself that helps us get through these hard times. But when there's no hard times to get through, that's the challenge. It's hard. Yeah. So we were at that house for 1 year. Let me tell you how that all happened. We were at that house for 1 year, and we had outgrown the house. Was at the end of my rope trying to figure out how to get this place a bigger place, or get this place bigger. And Pastor Buddy came to me and he says, "Hey, do you want another house, a bigger house?" And I said, "Yeah." So a member of our church family came to me and said, "I have a house," took me and showed it to me, and told me the amount that they wanted. And it was only not a lot more than what I was paying for the little house in the ghetto on the north side of Springfield. And this was a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage, corner lot, beautiful house. But I had to make a choice. Do I want this new house, which I'll be renting, or do I want to continue buying this house, which I will own? And I had to think about it. I was like, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this so that I can own this house and it be for me? Or am I doing this so that I could help people? And so I gave up the house that I was buying and rented the house, the nicer house, and so we could have 9 beds. And so we got the new house and we got 9 beds, and I had more people coming, and it had, it was better for us, for the program. And we tried to go and get where we could get some funding and get in state funding and stuff like that to grow the program. And I can't do that. We are, because the state wants to tell you how to run your program, and they want you to do certain things, and they want you to allow the people to take Suboxone and methadone and different substances like that. It's supposed to be like an opiate blocker, but it's really just drugs. And I'm not going to allow that. And so we come to change our life. We come to give our life to Christ. We can change. Being clean is clean. We don't put nothing in our body to change the way we think or feel. And that's the only way that I believe you can do it. Who wants to be a slave to something else? Our battles to get sober and get our lives together. So I had been at Economy Tire for a while. And I decided, we had been at the new house for almost a year. And I was like, okay, I've been talking with Carla. We'd been to a couple concerts, been on a couple dates and stuff like that. And I said, okay, I need a career. I need something to move. I need to move forward from Economy Tire. It was a great place to start off from, but, I need so I went to Coca-Cola. And at Coca-Cola, I went to go be a maintenance mechanic there. And they had me take this test. And he's like, have you ever done this before? And I was like, no, I work on cars. But, it was pretty simple. He's like, okay, we'll call you. So I leave Coca-Cola. And if you know where Coca-Cola's at, there's train tracks right outside. He's like, we'll call you within a week. I'm crossing the tracks. My phone's blowing up, Coca-Cola. And I'm like, yes, I got this is the career that God had put out for me. Well, I never heard back from Coca-Cola. I went and did my drug test. They did their background check and never called me. Well, I started looking at the background check, and it turns out that I'm wanted in California. I got a $250,000 warrant out for my arrest, and I'm freaking out, and I'm wanted for a home invasion, robbery, and auto theft. And I'll be honest, I'm guilty. I'm guilty, and I know that I'm guilty. And so I contact the court. The first time in my life, I never decided to go to court without being in handcuffs. I contact the court, and I told them that I was in Missouri and asked if we could do an arraignment on Zoom or something like that. And the judge said, no, you need to come in person. So I'm freaking out. I'm like, okay, they're going to lock me up. I've never been OR'd, and especially on a $250,000 bail. And and my criminal record is horrible. And I fly to California, and I walk in the courtroom, and he says, okay, I'm going to release you on your own recognizances. I said, I'm going to hire my own attorney. He said, okay, set my court date and let me leave. Let me leave California and come back here. This is all God, because this is not possible for me. And so Carla started looking up attorneys for me, and every attorney, they're looking in California, they're looking at my criminal background, and then they're looking at the crime, and then they're making how much they want me to pay to have them represent me. And every attorney said 20 grand. 20 grand. And I'm like, I don't have 20 grand. And she sends me call this attorney. So I call this attorney, and the lady says, Shane, I want to set up a Zoom meeting with you, and I want to talk about your case. And so she sets up a Zoom meeting with me, and she says, first thing she says, I don't want to know about your case. I want to know about you. Who are you? What is your story? And I gave her my story. I told her my testimony, from childhood forward, everything, and where I was at. And I also told her that I was guilty, and that I wasn't willing to, if I didn't want to get on the stand, that I would not lie. If I was put on a stand, I would not lie. I will tell the truth. And she said, I'm going to take your case. And I said, how much is it going to cost me? She said, normally it would cost you $20,000, but I'm going to take your case for free. And I said, what? She says, Shane, I'm going to tell you right now, I pay my tithing before I pay my rent. And I was like, okay, God. Because I was scared to death, the offer they had for me was 12 years at 80%, and then double it for my strike. Because if you have a strike, you get double that, and then another year on top of that for your prison prior. So it would have been 25 years at 80% would have been what the amount of time I would have gotten out of it had I been convicted. And I flew to California for court, and this is I've never seen anything like it in my life. I never said a word. I sat there, and she talked to the judge, turned around, and told me I could leave. You're free. You're done. Free to go. And there was stuff that happened that she had to do, and she had to have investigators go talk to these people, but they had me dead to rights. I was guilty. And the house that I had went in, I had known the family for a long time, and the people said that I'm not the same person, that they're not going to press charges. And it was just all God. It was all God. There was no way other than Him stepping in and intervening in the whole situation. And it's just one miracle after another when I'm serving God. And here's the honest to God truth. I had already decided that if I am going to prison, it's because God had work for me to do there. And I went into it with that attitude, because I know that I'm forever changed. I'm no longer the same person. And so I know that I have a plan. God has a plan and a purpose for my life, and it doesn't matter where it's at. If it's in a prison cell, it's in a prison cell. I didn't believe that that's where it was going to be for me, because I don't see him bringing me as far as he brought me for me to turn around and have to go to prison. But if that was what it was, then I was willing to do that, and I was going to, keep my faith and know that he had a plan and a purpose for all that. So I came back here, and we went to Fairfield Bay. So I had planned on proposing to Carla, and I was gonna do it at church, and Kevin was like, "Dude, don't do that. That's corny." So we had bought a boat, and we went to Fairfield Bay. It's in Arkansas, and in the middle of this lake, there's an island. And so I decided we were gonna hike to the top of this. You could park your boat at the island, and then you could hike up to the top and oversee like everything. So when I get to the top, I'm gonna propose. And so Kevin had the ring, and we're hiking up this hill, and he's making all these weird comments, and she's not catching on. And then so when I proposed, she said yes, and God, she had been through so many things in her life, and her ex-husband, in a nutshell, was a lot similar to who I used to be, other than he's kind of a sissy. No, just but the way he treated her, and the cheating and the drugs and the abuse and all of that stuff. And it was really, really, I had made a decision that, I read enough of the Bible to know that you love your wife like Jesus loved the church. That and so we've been married now for a little over a year, almost. Well, we got married in October, so we've been married for a little over a year, but we don't argue. We respect each other. We trust each other. There's none of that jealousy or weird stuff between us. And she's there for me. I'm there for her. God had sent her for me. And it's all because of that one decision that I made to cry out, to ask God for help in my life and to see if he was real. And I know for a fact that nothing that I have is mine. I have to make that clear. Everything that I have belongs to him, and he is first in my life. He's before my wife. He's before my relation. He's before my relationship with my wife. He's before my program. He's before my job. He is number one. He has to be number one in my life. And in order for our marriage to work, he has to be number one in her life. And that's how we do it. We pray together. But Jesus is first in both of our lives, and we're both running towards God. And as we're running towards God, we're getting closer together. Prior to Jesus, the only way we could repent of sin was to sacrifice animals and the blood. It was blood everywhere. Jesus came here, fully man and fully God. Lived here on this earth for 33 years. Felt everything, every emotion, every problem, everything that we've felt, he has felt 100%. And he did it perfect. And he knew that he was the ultimate sacrifice. He allowed himself to be crucified and killed for our sins, not for him. And he died on the cross, and he rose on the third day. The purpose was to bring salvation to the world. The purpose was to bring salvation to anybody who would call on the name of Jesus. And to get religion out of the way. I could say it like this: heaven is a real place, and so is hell. Hell was not designed for you or me. We have to choose it. Salvation is a free gift on where we get to spend eternity. We could either spend eternity with God, or we spend eternity total separation. That's a scary thought. We spend eternity with total separation from God. even if you don't believe in God, or you have somewhat of a God conscience. I think everybody is born with a little bit of a God conscience. And so the thought of total separation from any kind of peace, any kind of comfort, any kind of okay feeling is a lot worse than that. Like right now, we're in a peaceful conversation. You'll never ever have one of those in hell. That there's all these rules and commands and all this stuff you had to do, and the reason it was like that was to show us that we couldn't do it, that we could not live up to those standards. There's not one. It says in the Bible, not one could live up to those standards. But when Jesus got on that cross, and you know, I never thought, I thought about this. This hit me hard one day, was the fact that he didn't have to, you know, and that at any moment he could have said, no, I'm done. I'm not doing this. He had, what is it, 777 times 1,000? I don't know. It says in the Bible, I couldn't quote it, but he could have called a legion of angels or whatever it is, and right then and stopped at any moment. But he suffered, and horribly. And in the midst of his suffering, he said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But in that moment when he said it was finished, that was for us. So anybody that believes in him or calls on him can be saved. We're covered by his blood. And that means everything that you've ever done, he sees it no more. It says God remembers your sin no more, as far as the east is the west. If you take off going east, you'll never hit west. If you take off going west, you'll never hit east. But if you go south, you'll hit north. So that's how far the east is from the west. So what does it have to do? It has everything to do with you. And if you were the only person here, he would have done it just for you. But when I think of what he did it for everybody. Like we all, it's the most amazing thing. Like we all can call on the name of the Lord and be saved and have eternal life with him. You know, and life more abundantly here too. And people get, I always be careful when I say that, because I think people really get it mixed up with financial stuff, and it has absolutely nothing to do with money. It can. If God wants to bless you with $1 million, he will. But I'm really wealthy, and I don't have a lot of money, you know. So I'm free. Like I'm free. My life. I can't explain it. The amount of freedom that God's given me. I can go anywhere in the world now today, and people doing anything, and not feel the need to put nothing in my body, when I couldn't even leave the jail that I've been in for however many years and make it home without stopping to get high. You know, I'm free from drugs and alcohol. I can't explain it. But I think salvation is important for the way we live today here too. You know, to be able to share it with other people, what it is and the reason, you know, we believe what we believe and how we could have peace right here in this moment is because I know where my salvation is. You know, I know that if I walk out this door right now and God forbid something happens and this body goes away, my spirit says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Right now. I don't know. So that's comforting to me. When I say I'm free, you know, I would like to talk about forgiveness a little bit. You know what I mean? So I had a lot of abuse when I was a child, and I carried all that till I was 36 years old. You know, I never told a soul about anything that happened or anything like that. And I went through life like really messed up. And I don't have anxiety. I don't take medication. And I have forgiveness. Like everything that has ever happened, not only am I forgiven and I know that I'm forgiven, like I used to think I had to earn it, but now I know that what he did on that cross, that's what he did it for, so that I can be forgiven. And then on top of that, I can forgive. Like I don't have to go through life with this chip on my shoulder about this molestation or about this abuse, about being less than, because we're all the same, you know. And the people who harmed me or whatever, I don't have any ill feelings toward them. I don't have to go out and do these things to these people to make myself feel okay. Like, I'm okay with just being okay. You know what I mean? And that forgiveness, I don't know. When we do communion, it talks about, you know, if you're harboring any type of resentment or anger towards anybody, that you need to go forgive before you partake of the communion. You know, and I could honestly sit and do that with our church. For a while there, I was like, I don't know if I should do this, you know, because it's telling me that I probably shouldn't. But I have true forgiveness, and that comes with peace. You know, and that peace can only come from one place, because I've never had it. I've never had peace. You know, never comfortable in my own skin. So, you know, that can only come from one place. So, we're getting ready to get married, and I'm looking on. I'm trying to find a career. I'm trying to find something. How am I going to support? You know, I want to be able to support my wife. I want to not. She has a job. She supports herself, but I want to be able to make sure she's taken care of. I want to make sure that, you know, she doesn't have to worry that if she needs to go to the doctor, she needs anything. I want her to be secure in those areas, and I'm praying like, God, I need to find something. And I'm looking on Indeed, and I see this job. It's a mechanic for a concrete pumping company, and it's a union job. And so we had made plans. We were supposed to go to Silver Dollar City. We're getting ready to get married in a couple days, and I had taken a week. I had stopped working at Economy Tire, and I was doing the satellite stuff. It was supposed to make you rich, but it didn't. And so I was wearing a sweatshirt that said, be the warrior God created you to be. And I tell her we're in Springfield, and she picked me up from the recovery house, and I'm like, I have to go by and talk to this guy about this job. It's on Indeed, but I don't do good on the computers and all that other stuff, and I want to go talk to him in person. And she's like, well, we're supposed to be at Silver Dollar City by this time. Oh, it's gonna be fine. I'm just gonna go by there real quick. So I walk in there and I talk to this guy, and I'm like, I seen this on Indeed, blah blah blah, and he's like, he stops, he's working on a truck. He stops what he's doing. He's like, let's go in my office and sit down and talk. We sat there and talked for almost 2 hours, dude. She's sitting in the truck outside. She's hot. Oh my God, she's frustrated with me. We're supposed to be at Silver Dollar City. It's kind of like we had a little bit of time before we got married and after we got married, because our wedding present was we got to move in together. We weren't going on a honeymoon. We weren't yet, you know, that was later, but we get to move into our house together. That was our, you know. And so I talked to this guy, and he's telling me all this stuff. And this is a great career. This is great for me. But the only problem is I don't have any tools. You know, you're a mechanic, you need tools. And I told him, I says, look, I don't have any tools, this and that. But he took a liking to me, and I truly believe in my heart that it had to do with the sweatshirt I was wearing, because him and his wife are they're Christ followers. And so we talked, and so he called the owner of the company. He's like, hey, I got a guy that I'd like for you guys to interview. He told me, go on Indeed, just fill it out, and I'll try to get you an interview with the owners of the company. Well, the owner of the company told him, do you like him? He said, yeah. He said, hire him. So we're on our way we got to stop at Price Cutter. We're in Ozark, and she's frustrated with me. I'm like, okay, you just go in the store. I'll wait for you in the truck. And my phone rings, and I answer it, and it's Bobby, my boss. And he's like, hey, I need you to come back to Springfield and pick up a paper application. You got the job. When can you start? So I got married October 20th, and I started with the company that I work for now on October 22nd. God's blessed me with a great career, and I'm able to, you know, they know what I do. Like, so Monday night, if I were working, my boss is like, hey, no, you gotta go get the guys and take them over here. And they know my schedule and what I do, and they support me in what I do with the ministry and stuff like that. So that's been pretty awesome. And I thought I was going to prison. Instead, I got a career, so it's pretty cool. Um, we just remained, we're a small program. We have 2 houses. We have 15 beds. Um, and I'll help anybody that well, I'll take anybody. We don't have a bunch of entry fees, or you're gonna have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get into our program. You don't have an interview process, an application process. You have a desire to change your life, and we'll give you a chance. And it's been working now for about 3 years. So I do have one thing that I totally left out, and I probably shouldn't have.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So when I got here, when we first started the program, um, every day I would talk with Kevin, and Kevin would hear me cry, upset, and all I wanted to do was a relationship with my son. And he wanted nothing to do with me. He wouldn't accept my phone calls. He wouldn't call me back. And every day I would say, if I could just talk to him, if I could just hear his voice, I could be okay with that, And I was like, I'd pray, and I was like, God, if it's in your will, today, would he answer the phone? And little by little, we started building a relationship. He'd answer the phone here and there, probably because I called him so much. He wouldn't want to get tired of me calling. I'd call his grandmother and be like, I need to talk to my son. And little by little, the relationship started working. And I got to fly to California a couple times and spend a week with him here, a week with him there. Got to buy him Christmas presents and send him money or whatever. But I've been consistent. And last year, in the beginning of summer, I got a phone call that he was going through some struggles, and I told his uncle, we'll send him out here for the summer. And he agreed. So I got to spend the summer with my son. And he sees that I'm not the same. We talk almost every day. He left for 3 weeks, and he called me and said, Dad, I want to come home. And he came back. And he's back in California now, but he's got a girlfriend out there, and it is what it is. I understand. And the prayer is that at some point he'll want to come back, and he will come back. But God has restored my relationship with my children. I have a stepson as well that is my son's older brother, and him and I talk on a regular basis. And these were broken relationships that were almost not repairable, and without God they wouldn't have been repairable. But I have an amazing relationship with my children today, and Brandy's family. They've accepted me, and but I couldn't even go to their property or drive by their house. They'd call the cops on me before. Now God has restored my relationships with my brother, relationships with my kids, relationships with the people who wanted to kill me. And not that we have a relationship, but God has made it to where I don't have to look over my shoulder when I go to California for the wrong that I did to the people that I did wrong to. That's the God I serve. There's no end to the stuff that he could work out in my life or anybody's life. I got a phone call a couple weeks ago, probably about a month ago now, and it was from Paul. And I don't know, the very beginning of this story, I talked about Paul, the guy who raised me and was always there for me, the guy that considered me my dad. And he'd been battling cancer. And it was his sister, because he can't talk anymore. And I was talking with my brother on the phone, and I was like, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to get out there and go to his funeral or whatever the case may be. And I hung up the phone, and my wife looked at me, and she said, "Are you stupid?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "He's still alive. Let's go." And I have the most amazing wife. She booked our plane tickets right there that night. And that next Thursday, we flew out to California. And it was hard, but he got to see me changed, like forever changed. Like I'm not that person that I was. I'm not that, that lost kid, that lost soul that was running around doing all those things. That Jesus had truly changed me, and I got to spend a couple days with him, and I got to tell him, things that he didn't know, like what had happened after we left his house, and all the things that I had been through, and that, what God had done in my life and where I was at today. But the last thing he told me was, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. And, he got to meet my wife, and she was right there with me, you know. And I would have never went had it not been for her. You know what I mean? And I would have really not wanted to go by myself, And so, and that's really hard to see the man that, he was the strongest man I ever met in my life, the best man I ever met in my life. And to see him in that condition, barely could pick up a glass of water. But to know that it brought him comfort to see me and know that I'm not that person, that I've changed, and that my life is good. And I took a bunch of pictures of us and our wedding and our honeymoon. We ended up on a honeymoon. We got to go spend some time in Glacier Park this summer. We went for 2 weeks. Washington, Idaho, and Montana. So I got to share those pictures with him and share what's going on with him, in my life. And he gets to see that I'm forever changed, and there's only one way to be forever changed. There's only one source of power that could forever change anybody. And I don't have that power, but Jesus has that power. And I'm super grateful that I got to do that. And, that she was there with me